He's been to China. He's been to Ottawa. He's back in Regina now. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe joins me to talk about his trips recently. Premier Moe, you went to China in part to try and, or I guess mostly to try and see about getting these tariffs on canolas lifted. What did you hear? We've heard the argument, well, lift the EV tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles and everything will be good. I know you've said it's not that simple. So what did you hear and what should we know?
Yeah, it's not that simple. And what we did here, yes, that is part of the issue. But there is a willingness to look ahead and to not look back. Look ahead and start to have discussions about how we, as China and Canada, recalibrate the trade relationship that we have and move forward in a productive, pragmatic, and constructive way for not only the benefit of Canadian families, but the benefit of Chinese families and as well in providing a significant portion of their food security.
Okay, but I and that I have great connections to your province and the farmers that grow the canola, that grow the grains, that feed our country and theirs. And so I say this from that perspective. Is China a good trading partner? Is China a partner that we can rely on? Because they banned all canola from Canada from 2020 to 2022. It was a mixture of trying to block it with fake claims of disease and tariffs in 2017. I think there were other problems in 2013, 14. They have a habit of picking on canola.
Yeah.
So are they good partners?
No, the reason they pick on canola is it is Canada's largest export into China, and so it's the quickest and easiest, impact for them to have. And that is in many ways purposeful, as we, as in Saskatchewan, have worked to diversify, our trade away, not exclusively, but diversify a good portion of our trade away from North American markets to markets around the world. And if you truly want to do that, China is part of that conversation, regardless of what you might think with respect to their trading history. But this is what they traditionally can do every 4 to 6 years. We've worked through it on 2 or 3 occasions since I've been in this position. However, what we're seeing now is deeper and it's much more broad across the product mix. So the reason we're in China is it's a premium market, it's a growing market, and we're part of their food security supply chain. And we grow enough canola, fortunately, to be able to provide that market, the U.S. market, the Canadian market, as well as literally tens, if not over 100 other markets around the world. So this is how it is. It's not the first trade issue that we've had with China. We've had them with India. And maybe in some ways, Saskatchewan has more experience dealing with these trade nuances with countries around the world because of how diversified we are in our exports than not only other provinces, but maybe even more experienced than Canada at times.
Well, I remember being at the signing of a trade agreement with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2016, I think it was. And your predecessor, Brad Wall, was there. And I looked and I said, it's all just federal officials. And then what's this guy from Swift Current doing here? And he said, 40% of Canada's exports to India come from Saskatchewan. So I know you guys have that. Are you able to grow and develop other markets, whether it's for canola, wheat, other pulse crops that would pivot you away from China or at least insulate the farmers? Because, as soon as they announced that, I was texting with a relative who said, "What's the hit?" He said, $1 a bushel. That's significant, as you know. But, could you be looking at Mexico, at South Korea, Japan, the European Union to grow and expand the trading ability of Saskatchewan and Alberta farmers? Let's not forget them. I drove through their canola fields on the way to Stampede this year. Is there a way to diversify that so that China deciding, okay, next time we have an issue with them, we're going to pick a fight? Is there a way to do that with other countries?
Yeah, first I'd say this is not just a Saskatchewan issue. Proportionally very important to Saskatchewan, but it really does impact ag producers largely from Toronto to the Rocky Mountains, and so from British Columbia to Ontario. And so the answer to your question is, can we diversify, or increase our diversification and value in other markets? Yes. Can we do that to a degree to offset our largest two markets in the world, which is the United States first, China second? No. And so we are doing the diversification now. We've seen Japan, and I was in Japan after I was in China before we came home for a couple of days. We've seen Japan expand to be about $1 billion market for Saskatchewan exports.
So
Mexico,
that's a billion in Japan, and the 5 billion of canola, is that just 5 billion from Saskatchewan, or is that 5 billion nationally that goes to China?
nationally, of that, about 3.5 billion would be from Saskatchewan.
Okay, so that's a good growth on Japan.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and so Japan is in that $1 billion range of exports from our province alone. Mexico, more recently in the last few years, has also become a significant canola market. And I was down there this past year through a canola crush facility that they had built there. But they're over $1 billion market for Saskatchewan alone right now as it sits as well. That's why we're pleased to see Prime Minister Carney in Mexico this week engaging with President Sheinbaum there, because that is a very much an increasing and important market for us. Increasing in South Korea to some degree, as well as many other markets around the world. However, in saying all of that, just the sheer volume of this, what is a $43 billion export industry employing 200,000 people, you aren't going to replace the American market. You aren't going to replace the Chinese market. What we need is access to all of those markets. However, there's an understanding that in the current disruption of market access, tariff related discussion, trade talks, largely driven by the U.S., but I think in fairness, is extending indirectly to many countries around the world. What our trade agreements look like moving forward are going to be different than what they did in the past, and I think we have to come to that realization.
To go back to the EV question, those EV tariffs went in at the request of Joe Biden. This was before Donald Trump had even won. The Trudeau government was asked. They paused for a moment, not too long, but they paused, and then they said yes because they knew that our biggest market was asking for this. I never want to pit one industry or part of the country against the other, but I'm hearing a lot of that as I go back and forth. Um, EVs aren't really a market yet, but right now in the current situation, Donald Trump is saying to NATO members, increase your tariffs on China. We need to put pressure on them to end the war in Russia, to use their influence to get Putin to back down on Ukraine. That's an issue that's very important to your constituents as well.
Yeah,
Maybe a Ukrainian or two settled on the prairies of Saskatchewan.
yeah.
So, what do you do when I wrote about this a while ago. I said Prime Minister Carney is kind of caught between a rock and a canola bushel at this point. It is not a good position to be in.
And herein comes the art of the negotiation and finding a path forward. And the fact is this: two things. First is there's a lot more than China that are buying Russian oil today. Many more countries than China that are buying Russian oil here today. And two is, and this is more specific to the art of the negotiation and the responsibility that Prime Minister Carney, as ministers in our federal government have, and of which we will support their work in this, is this can't be about pitting one industry against another. This can't be about replacing one job in place of another. This has to be about defending the entirety of Canadian interests. And there's hundreds of thousands of people that work in the auto industry, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that work in the canola industry, and many more broadly associated to either of those industries. And at the end of the day, we need market access to all of the markets that we have, and maybe even more. And we need to go into each of these negotiations with the full intent of defending all Canadian jobs, all Canadian opportunities today and tomorrow, and not sacrificing or even thinking about trading one for the other. There is a path through this negotiation with the United States, and in this case, China, but I would say there's also India, there's the European Union, many other markets that are going to, be in line to have some degree of a negotiation in this very globally unrestful trade environment here today. And the federal government is going to have to be strong, and they're going to have to be quite defined in defending Canadian interests, and I mean the entirety of Canada. And this is a different tone from our province in the last bit, and maybe I just touch on that for a
Yeah,
moment, if
well,
you
I'd
will.
like to hear you on that
Yeah,
because you were not too pleased with the last occupant of
no,
uh, of the PMO.
no, and for 10 years, we in this province had at least the perception, and I think the fact of there's a lot of things that were happening and being done to us by our federal government and the prime minister. And that upset us very much. We felt our opportunities, our future opportunities for our children and for our province were being hindered by regulations that were coming in unconsulted by the federal government, all in the name of climate change and whatever. What we're seeing today is something quite different. First, we have a prime minister that is, openly willing to actually find some landing spots in these sensitive areas and help us work together to actually determine our own destiny when it comes to how we're going to develop wealth industries that create wealth into the future. And two, rather than having now the federal government do things to us, we have a federal government that is openly attempting to work alongside the provinces, and we have now other international leaders that are doing things to us as Canadians. And that's why I think it's important for us to come together as a federal government, but also as subnational leaders supporting the federal government, and not in any way talking about sacrificing one industry or one sector for another sector. They all need to be defended in our international market access. They all need to be defended in what we do each and every day, because there is no reason at all that we aren't going to be able to move forward tomorrow. And admittedly, it's going to look a little bit different, and trade agreements are going to look a little bit different in the future than they have in the past. But there's no reason at all that Canadians and Canadian industries and Canadian jobs aren't going to be able to move forward with a brighter future, as opposed to the feeling that they've been traded off one industry for the other. There's the challenge and the responsibility the federal government has, and I think it's incumbent on all of us as subnational leaders to be a part of that discussion, but be a part of that discussion in understanding that tomorrow is going to look different from today, and in a support to support our federal government and ensuring that we're actually able to, find the best trade agreements that we can and develop the industries in our nation, whether it be through Bill C5 or other, tax incentives, whatever needs to happen there, so that Canada tomorrow looks a lot brighter than it even does today.
I won't keep you too much longer, Premier. I know you're pressed for time, but I'll get you to respond to this. The description I had of the former prime minister is he showed up late to every meeting. He lectured for as long as he could, didn't listen when you and the other premiers were speaking, and then left early. The new guy shows up on time, listens, takes notes, and then has a discussion. I'd like to hear if you think that's fair, but also, tell me what his trade agenda is with the US or China or these other countries, because, Trudeau published his trade agenda for the last round of when we were renegotiating NAFTA, and it was all about gendered language, environmental stewardship, and things like that weren't directly related to trade. And the Americans were wanting market access, and we wanted gendered language. So it seems like a very different tone in terms of taking issues seriously.
Yeah, I would add to all of that, not only taking issues seriously and progressing through a discussion, and listen, we can give a little bit in our ideology and our stances from Saskatchewan's perspective if we're able to actually find not only a better place for Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan industries and opportunities, but we're Canadian as well, and we understand that we need to advance as a nation, and what's good for our province and what's good for Ontario and British Columbia is good for all of us collectively. So first of all, we have I think a pragmatic, open mind at the table in the Prime Minister that is focused. And here I think is not only his, and I hope this continues, his trade agenda, or it's about creating wealth. And it's about creating opportunity for us to trade with as many nations with as low a tariff barriers as possible. And I think that's also true in the opportunities that we see through Bill C5 and maybe a broader regulatory discussion. Opening up expansion and investment opportunities for all of the industries that are creating wealth to create more wealth and more jobs tomorrow. So it is about the generation of wealth in an ethical and sustainable way by creating that market access and that's going to admittedly look different tomorrow than it does today. But also determining our own destiny and how we're going to develop, projects in the Ring of Fire or in northern Saskatchewan or wherever that might be. So we appreciate, the pragmatic conversation that we're able to have, and we'll give a little bit if we can get to a better place more broadly as a nation. And I think we're definitely showing that side in our negotiations with the prime minister, and all of it at the end of the day is for us as a nation to be in a better place and each of our provinces to be in a stronger place. And I think we are being presented with, and there's a load of challenges, but I think we're being presented with one of the greatest generational opportunities that I certainly have seen in my elected period of time, and that Canada has seen for some period of time. It isn't going to be easy, and it's going to take some difficult discussions.
Are you
But
talking
my
about the
goodness,
shock of what Trump's done and that we've got to pivot and do better?
we need to pivot and do better with respect to developing the industries that are creating wealth from coast to coast to coast, and we're starting to see that happen, and it's not a minute too soon.
Last question. You got your copper mine. Give me the one project you want to see on the Grey Cup list, because I know you're expecting the Rough Riders to be in Winnipeg for the Grey Cup, and Prime Minister Carney said he's going to announce something new by Grey Cup. So other than the Riders winning, what project do you want to see on that list?
Well, the obvious next two would be a couple of uranium mines that have all of their provincial approvals and are just waiting to find their way through some of the federal regulatory approval stages. You could add to that numerous investments in the oil industry. We have lithium, helium coming on board as well. So the list is long from Saskatchewan's perspective. But the next two obvious ones are, a couple of uranium mines that have every provincial approval that can be provided, and they'd be able to find their way through the federal approval process sooner rather than later, and put northern Saskatchewan people to work, many of whom are Indigenous, but not all, and that would be a positive for an area of the province that is looking for more employment.
All right, Premier Scott Moe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let us know what you think. Drop a comment down below, share this on social media, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.